Stress itself is a complicated concept. Our bodies deal with environmental stressors in a variety of ways, and ongoing research continues to suggest and modify current knowledge. Behavior just adds another complication to the puzzle, as stress can elicit a variety of behavioral responses. If the stressor is acute or short-term, these behavioral responses are adaptive and lucrative. There are two stress response mechanisms. Coined by Walter Cannon, the fight or flight response can go one of two directions. As the name implies, the animal will either fight or combat the incoming stressor, such as a predator, or take flight, quite literally with birds, and desert the area to evade the incoming stressor. During the fight or flight response, the rapid release of catecholamine hormones like epinephrine and norepinephrine elicits a number of physical changes. Visceral activity and digestion are put on hold. Visual acuity increases, the heart rate goes up, gas exchange increases in the lungs, and blood flow increases to the brain. Glucose stores are mobilized from the liver, and blood flow increases to the muscles. Each of these physical changes allows for and mediates behavioral changes that are adaptive in dealing with acute stress. Arousal and alertness increase, attention is focused, feeding and reproductive behaviors are suppressed. A persisting or longer-term stressor triggers a glucocorticoid response. When an animal experiences a prolonged stressor, neuronal signals are sent to the hypothalamus. In birds, this results in the release of corticotropin-releasing hormone, CRH, into the hypophyseal portal system. CRH is then transported to the anterior pituitary gland, where it binds specific receptors and stimulates the release of adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, into the circulation. When ACTH reaches the adrenal cortex and binds specific receptors, corticosterone is released. In general, release of cort is thought to help an animal recover from or cope with a stressful stimulus, shut down or slow any superfluous energy expending systems, and keep the animal prepared for ensuing stressors. Specifically, increasing cort concentrations can result in increasing glucose in the blood, promotion of circumstantially lucrative behaviors such as hiding or fleeing, inhibition of factors associated with growth and reproduction, and suppression of the immune system. During time-limited events, these responses to cort secretion are thought to be adaptive, allowing the animal to redirect its energy for survival during a stressful experience. However, prolonged exposure to cort, which is seen during repeated transient or chronic stressful events, may have adverse consequences, such as long-term growth inhibition, decreased fecundity, and depressed immune function. Further, the response to chronic stress can manifest in maladaptive behaviors, which, over time, can negatively impact biological functioning. We previously mentioned that the suppression of reproductive behavior can be advantageous in short-term situations, as the animal is directed momentarily to forget the primal need to procreate and direct its attention towards evading a stressor. However, under chronically stressful conditions, the loss of a motivation to reproduce can be detrimental to a species. For the remainder of this video, we are going to concentrate on lucrative behavioral responses to acute stress, or those behaviors that help an animal to evade and overcome a stressor, in shorebirds. The stress axis can be initiated upon predator recognition, and resulting behaviors can be quite fascinating. Recent research has investigated the role of stress in decision-making, especially under the risk of predation. Anti-predator decision-making can affect individual fitness or affect change in ecological systems. Long-term costs of anti-predator decision-making can be substantial, but short-term benefits may prove adaptive. Behaviors may manifest in a variety of categories, including vigilance, hypervigilance, and defensive avoidance. Let's use birds and their response to human disturbance as our example. Human presence adds yet another environmental stressor for wild animals that are already dealing with changing environments. As the human population expands, so do development, tourism, and other anthropogenic changes to the environment. Tourism and development continue to impact wildlife, especially in coastal habitats. Impacts on shorebirds are particularly evident, as these birds will often recognize humans as predators. A nesting bird, in particular, might become stressed when a threat is presented to her chicks. Nest desertion, a manifestation of defensive avoidance, can be detrimental if there are chicks in the nest. The chicks lose protection and are now subject to injury or death by the predator, or even thermal or other stressors posed by the environment. However, some birds have acquired more complex behavioral adaptations. Plovers are somewhat famous for their elaborate distraction displays. She may look injured, but just keep watching. The plover cleverly feigns a broken wing to lure the predator away from her nest. Take another look. The broken wing display makes the plover appear to be an easy target for the predator. However, after the predator is far from the nest, she flies away. The predator is left confused and is now sufficiently distracted. This is a textbook example of a behavioral adaptation to stress, as the plover will not perform these actions for any purpose other than nest protection under the perceived threat of a predator. These birds have developed a way to cope with a predator or human disturbance. A number of studies have used such displays to quantify the effects of human approaches to nests in ground nesting coastal birds. Incidents of such behaviors may be directly associated with hatching success, with increasing disturbance correlated to decreasing success. Lord et al. Quantified time and distance away from nests in response to approaches and created conservation recommendations, which included protection of nesting sites on beaches. These ethological studies, which can be conducted by simply setting up cameras around nests and viewing activity, represent a non-invasive study technique which can be used to provide justification for further protection of natural areas. Although the broken wing behavior is adaptive and often helpful in deceiving predators, the chicks are still left unprotected for a period of time, allowing for an increased chance of predation by other intruders or additional environmental stressors to which the unprotected chicks are now subjected. Behavior can be seen as a soft science, as interpretation of results can be subjective and therefore highly variable. However, the predictability and specificity of the broken wing display make this behavior an ideal proxy for studying the effects of disturbance. Other behaviors can be quantified by their direct effects on nest success. For example, total nest desertion may be more detrimental than these deception displays. I argue that behavioral studies are an excellent technique for quantifying the effects of environmental stressors on wildlife with minimal invasiveness and ample results.